Hi, I'm Jamie, and this is Book Tease, the podcast that celebrates the power of well written smut. We are in our Lust of the Irish series for March, and it is our last book. Can you believe it? This year's flying by already. I mean, my goodness. Hello, 2026, quarter one already gone. We are doing Morbidly Yours by Ivy Fairbanks, and it is the first book in a Love in Galway series. So, yay. Okay, full disclosure on this book. It has been in my TBR for the better part of a year. I have been excited to read it. And when I decided to do an Irish series for March, I put this book in there and I put it last because I was like, I'll give myself time to read it and it'll be so good. And I've been looking forward to it. It took me so long to get into it, like a good third of the way through the book before I was into it. I ended up really liking it. But it took me a third of the way through the book to start enjoying it because I had it set in my head for whatever reason that this was a rom-com. Thought it was a fun, quirky rom-com. I don't know if it's just the cover that made me think that, if it's all the little um death puns that they stuck in the back. No, because when you actually read it, it tells you that his he has to be married before his 35th birthday. It tells you that the main female character has lost her husband and is recovering from grief and moves to another um country. She moves to Ireland from Texas. And I mean, it tells you all of that. And he's a mortician. And, it even says he starts to crack the ice around her grieving heart. I mean, that sentence is in here, but still in my head, I said rom com. So a good third of the way through the book, I was like, this does not feel like a rom com. Where are the jokes? Where's the giggles? And to be fair, there are some giggles sprinkled through. It does have some fun puns in it. He is incredibly sarcastic and really fun to listen to or to read in his dialogue, but I just okay, it's not really rom-commy, if you get it. If you picking up what I'm putting down. I still love the book. I did super get into it, but it wasn't what I expected at all. And let's get into it. Morbidly Yours by Ivy Fairbanks. It is the first book in the I Love in Galway. We have Lark, and she's from Texas, Austin, Texas, to be specific. So, hello, Queen. And she loses her husband. Her husband passes away, and we don't find out how until further into the book. But we do learn that she blames herself for however he passed, and she's carrying a bunch of guilt, and she has sworn off serious relationships because she blames herself for her husband's passing. And she moves to Ireland for a fresh start because um someone who worked with her, or her work, she's an animator and she loved her job back in Texas, but her company found out how her husband passed and everyone was looking at her different. And so she just needed a fresh start. Everywhere she went reminded her of her husband, Reese. And so she just needed a fresh start. She moves to Galway, and because she's getting this animator position on this new movie, animated movie, obviously, um, about Grace O'Malley. And she's the lead animator, and it's just a project position. So it's temporary, it has a deadline. So another reason why she doesn't want to get into a relationship. Well, she moves next door to a mortuary. Not on purpose either, because she rented the apartment sight unseen, obviously, because she's in Texas. She can't really just sprint over and take a look at it. So she moves into this apartment, and there's a box there that this is how the book opens. There's a box, and she opens it thinking it's one of her boxes that she shipped because she's unpacking all her stuff. And it turns out to be body bags. So she's like, wow, this is a super weird purchase. I think I'll bring it next door to who it belongs. And will maybe like she's an artist type. She automatically assumes that whoever bought body bags was doing it for some sort of weird art project. I guess fair enough. There's no lot for that to be an assumption. So she goes next door and she meets Callum, who is our main male character, and he is kind of shy. He is tall. He is lean, but with a surprisingly good body. Love that for him. And he's still kind of got a little sense of humor. And he doesn't know that she doesn't know that it's a funeral home that he runs. And so she's making little jokes like, "Oh, well, like, do you have a lot of dead people here?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, usually." And she starts to get a little freaked out. She's like, "I thought this was like a B&B." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And then he finds they break that ice and it's hilarious. And so then they start kind of running into each other and he reluctantly helps her because she goes for her first day at work and there's a storm and she doesn't know the bus schedule. And so she's all wet. And he's like, "Well, let me just carry you to work." And he's in his hearse. She has a little mild like moment because her husband passed. And so she is trying to run away from any reminders of mortality. And here she has moved in next door to a funeral home. So she's having trouble escaping that. And they just start becoming good friends. They keep running into each other. He's super nice to her. He has a stutter and he is like social anxiety. He doesn't like hanging out around a lot of people. And she is just naturally vivacious and bubbly and very southern and makes friends everywhere she goes and is super accepting and doesn't even blink twice at the fact that he has this stutter. And they just like hit it off and become really good friends. And so the bulk of the book is just them becoming friends and you not knowing how her husband died, but knowing that she super blames herself. And Callum also has a bit of a dilemma. This funeral home has been in his family for a few generations, and he was raised by his grandparents because his father sucks and ran off or whatever. They still know him, still in the family, but he lives elsewhere. And I think he lives in Scotland. His grandfather has passed away recently, and he said in his will that he would bequeath the business to Callum, who's running it already. But he has to be married by his 35th birthday. You know what? I have never heard of this sort of thing outside of books, specifically romance novels. I've never heard of this in real life. Who's doing this? Who is forcing children to get married? The reasoning being they know how socially awkward Callum is, and they think this will push him out of it, or his grandfather thinks it'll push him out of his comfort zone and force him to settle down because he wants the family business to stay in the family and he wants Callum to be able to be married and set up to have heirs and, keep it all in the family. And they want him to be happy. So this is their way of doing that. I understand the reasoning. I still think it's kind of shitty because if he doesn't get married by his 35th birthday, then the business passes on to Callum's father, who's in Scotland and could give a fuck about the business. And he's already set up buyers for it. He's like, "You're not going to get married for your 35th birthday. You are an awkward guy. So you're not, I'm definitely going to be able to sell this business and get money." That's his current dilemma. And the more he becomes friends with Lark, he tells her, and this is what I'm up against. And he also has another problem. Not only is he socially awkward, but he is also ace. And what that means is he cannot feel sexual attraction towards someone until he gets to know them on a personal level, at least until he becomes friends with them or gets to know them personally. That's the only way he'll feel sexually attracted. He does not feel sexual attraction just from seeing somebody and saying, "No, you're hot." He can recognize that someone looks good, but he's not going to want to get physical with someone until he gets to know them personally. I've known a couple of people who are ace, and this is a very accurate representation of what it is. You do not want to get physically involved until you feel comfortable with that person, until you feel a sort of connection with that person. It was really nice to see that representation in Callum. The fact that he's ace, he has a different kind of sexual orientation than what is considered norm. And he has a stutter issue even as an adult, and it's a genetic kind of stutter situation. So he is worried about if he's going to pass this stutter on to his children, if he ever has children. It's harder for him to meet people because apparently the dating scene in Galway is pretty slim pickings anyway. And then you're adding on he's socially awkward. He runs a funeral parlor, which some people might find strange. He's always wearing black, kind of has a not really goth aesthetic, but a kind of goth aesthetic. And he, is ace. So he's having trouble feeling sexually attracted to people. Anyway, and now he has a very short time frame to find a wife in. So poor Callum's having it rough. And then Lark is just trying to stick her head in the sand and escape her life and go about her business and pretend like, you know, mortality doesn't exist and she can run away from whatever happened in her past. And there's added to all of this, there's this subplot of a guy at her work who is testing her. Like everyone else really loves her. Like she instantly makes friends. She's very likable. She's super kind. She's bubbly. She's vivacious. Like I said, I love that word. But there's this one guy named Sean at her job who's just being an ass because he feels entitled and he thinks her position should have been his position. And so he's lazy with his work and he's just being a jerk to her, being very inappropriate. And so she's up against this guy and she does not like confrontation. So she's always just trying to and look, I don't like confrontation either, to be totally fair. I don't know. Well, I'm sure there are people out here there who love it. I've known some people who love the confrontation. I don't dig it. I'd rather just say, okay, whatever you do, you. I'm walking away. I have to protect my boundaries and my sanity, and I don't have time for that nonsense. I get it. But if you're in the position of authority and you have someone on your team who is testing you, trying to embarrass you in front of everyone and just be a general jerk, you have to, and not wanting to meet their deadlines, then you have to, set your foot down. You have to. So that really agitated me about Lark. I really like her, but stand your ground, babe. You're a Texan. Stand your ground. We also find out her mom sucks. Her mom's not a big character in this book, but her mom doesn't allow her to feel comfortable in her feelings and in her grief. She's one of those people that any negative emotion must be banned. So that's another reason Lark left and moved somewhere else, is because she wanted to be able to express her grief, feel her grief without feeling like she needed to apologize for it. Okay, on with the plot line. It's a very simple plot line, so there's not a whole lot of points I have to hit. But they become good friends. Callum becomes very sexually attracted to Lark and vice versa. But she doesn't even tell him that she is a widow. She just lets him assume that she's divorced and does not tell him until they're like I don't I'm like halfway through the book. Like they are almost involved at this point before she finally they are. And not almost. They are fully involved by the time she tells him that she is actually a widow. And he's kind of guessed it. I mean, he's around death and mourning and grief. So he kind of has guessed it at this point. But they have a friendship, they have an attraction, but because is very anti, I'm going to have another relationship, blaming myself for my husband's passing, which we don't find out why until way later in the book. We just have to wonder, assume the worst. I don't know. I kind of assumed that it was something because she's so anti standing up for herself and she's a very, very much a people pleaser. I kind of assumed it was almost exactly what it was. But she has taken it upon herself to try to find a match for Cal. She's looking around and she's got him on this dating site and she's introducing him to some of her coworkers and then kind of hating when like getting a little jealous when he hits it off with someone. And there's a florist that he's worked with that knows him that is also very attracted to him, and she's been trying to get him to ask her out for a while. And anyway, all that's going on. And while they're doing this matchmaking and she's talking about his dates, they're becoming closer and closer and getting more and more attracted to each other until the time comes where they can't resist and they kiss. And ooh, shy, quiet Callum is a firecracker once you get him started, baby. Like he may take a minute to become attracted to somebody, but once he does, he is like fire, flames. Hell yeah. So this is when the book started getting really interesting. They begin a friends with benefits, which always works great, right? I mean, my husband and I started as friends with benefits, and now look, we've been together 11 years. So sometimes it works that way. They start a friends with benefits because he's the first person she's been with after her husband's passed, and he's been gone for 2 years. Feel like I need to throw that in there because the way she hasn't really processed her grief, really. And you start thinking maybe it was a lot sooner, but no, it's been 2 years since he passed. She just, like I said, likes to stick her head in the sand and not really confront her feelings or her emotions or anything unpleasant, which I mean, we now know she kind of gets from her mother. So now they're doing this friends with benefits. And of course, the way Callum is wired, he's going to have an even harder time connecting with someone else when his mind is being filled with Lark. And that's his best friend. And they've become so close. And now they're sexually involved. And apparently it's really, really good. So, I mean, he doesn't want, but he also knows I really want to keep this business in the family and it means so much to me. And he's trying to find a loan. He's trying to find any way to get out of this will. And that's basically what happens through the whole book until we get like here, like further in the book. And then that's when everything starts kind of coming to a head. She tells Callum what actually happened, that her husband passed away and she was having a hard time dealing with it. And then they start doing, well, should we just stop this? And then he pushes, hey, why don't you just marry me? You can marry me and then take as long as you need to get comfortable with it. We could just continue dating, but then we both kind of get what we want because she wants to stay in Ireland, even after her job is finished now because she's grown so close to Callum. And he's like, well, if I marry you, you could stay in Ireland and I get to keep my business. But she is just being so stubborn and she is just really set on, no, because I ruined my husband and killed him and I'm gonna ruin you too, and you're too good a person to be tied to someone like me. Okay, because I'm not gonna make you wait forever to find out what happened to her husband because that frustrated me. Here's what happened to him. You tell me if you think that she should be beating herself up for the rest of her life and not having another relationship because of this incident. I mean, it's not good, but you kill your husband, Lark. What happened is she was so set in her career. She's becoming this really hotshot animator, like getting really up in the business and doing a great job, especially for someone so young. And he felt her husband Reese felt very neglected in their marriage, and he was very unhappy. And she didn't notice, she didn't know. And he ends up telling her, and she was in straight denial. There's no way. And they end up having this huge fight. And he was upset after this huge fight and he left and he got into a car accident and hit a tree and he died on impact. So she's blaming herself like, I wasn't a good wife. I was busy with my job. I didn't realize he was unhappy. And then when he did tell me, instead of just accepting it very demurely, I I fought back and we had a big fight and then he was upset and that's the whole reason he crashed. I understand the guilt. But has anyone in your life backed you up and said, "Hey, what the fuck?" Apparently, his sister, Reese's sister, who also worked with her as an animator, which is why she felt like she needed to leave her company. His sister at the funeral said, "If it wasn't for you, my brother would still be here." She just said it in Greece. But Lark really took that to heart because this was her best friend and it was a coworker and her sister-in-law. So she took that to heart and that was another reason she was just really eternalized this guilt and beat herself up about it. I'm wondering, did Lark, in all her ease of making friends, have any other friends in the world over in Austin that could have just said, "Girl, it wasn't your fault. Let's get you into therapy. Let's get you processing this. Your friend only said that out of grief for her brother. It's not truly your fault." But apparently, no one did. Her cousin says it way later in the book. But why didn't you say that before? I guess if she did and Lark processed her grief healthily, then we wouldn't have the whole book. So the book teaches a lot of lessons. So much for rom-comming. I ended up really liking it. I know I'm talking shit, but I did really like it by the end. And I'm gonna tell you why I really liked it. Let me finish going through the plot line. They fall in love. She's being super stubborn, not wanting to get married. She tells Callum what happened, and he's like, "Look, I'll be as patient as you need, but let's get married anyway." And she's like, "I cannot do that to you. I do not want to get married." And then she doesn't talk to him for like 2 or 3 weeks because she's freaking out. The fact that he said, "Look, I love you, so let's just try to make this work." Okay, your deadline's coming up. She goes and tries to get a I'm gonna be honest, I could have done without the whole work drama of it all. We had enough drama going on elsewhere, especially with her creating her own drama internally. We didn't really need the work drama, but she wanted to apply for this position because she really likes this animating company in Galway that she's working at, and her projects come to an end, but they're hiring for a TV series. And so she wants to apply to that to stay in Galway longer and because she really likes it and she wants to stay with Callum so they can be friends. But she doesn't get the position because her work nemesis ends up getting it. We find out that he gets it because he stole her ideas and pitched them as his own, and that's what set him apart. Well, this becomes the catalyst for her finally standing up for herself. She finds that out and she pitches a fit and actually stands up for herself. Thank goodness. And he ends up getting fired because everyone else speaks out once she's broken the ice. Everyone's like, yeah, he's been making it terrible because of, he's the the owner of the company is his uncle. And so everyone thinks, oh, nepotism at its finest. We can't cross him because he got the last art lead or animation director, got the last one fired, and now he's been after Lark, and we all like Lark, and she does a great job, but he's no, he's family. So everyone steps up and actually talks against him and says, no, he's been making this workplace toxic and horrible. So he gets fired and she ends up getting the job. Well, in her character shift and standing up for herself, she is still not wanting to get married, not unless it's real. But she wants Callum and she wants to try to make what they have work. So she goes to this guy that she's just met. It's actually interesting connection. The florist that was super into Callum, she tried to date him, whatever. Callum was too busy in love with Lark to make it work with her. But she's a fiddler in a little band, and the vocalist is apparently a really hot solicitor. So they even did a weird double date that was so awkward for everyone because Lark and Callum kept making googly eyes at each other before they finally sexually initiated their relationship. But anyway, that's just a little tie-in that happens. But she goes to this guy's name's Aiden, and he finds a loophole in the will that apparently Callum's lawyers couldn't find in several months. Aiden finds it in like 2 hours. I don't know. Aiden's brilliant. Whatever. He finds a loophole in the will. So Callum doesn't have to get married now in order to keep the family business. The loophole for anyone who's interested is that because the whole main objective of the will was for the business to stay in the family, the fact that the dad had a written up offer from another company to purchase once he became owner, that forfeited his right. And so then it passes to Callum automatically without a marriage. So, yay, all's well that ends well. She ends up staying in Ireland for her job, and he gets to keep his family business without any weird loophole jump arounds, whatever. And they start dating officially, and she gets into therapy and to work on her issues with guilt. That's the whole book. And actually really ended up enjoying it. Once I got over my, oh, this should be a rom-com. Yay, I'm ready for the giggles. And then expecting a super funny, giggle-worthy book and getting more of an emotional um drama, eternal struggle, grief-laden, angsty book instead. But it worked. This is why it worked. I'm going to jump to casting before quotes because it's going to explain why I got into the book. And this is why having a good imagination and having casting really makes a difference because it took this book from a 3 to a 4 for me. Yes, I'm giving it 4 stars. Because I couldn't help but picture Callum as Youngblood. I did. Maybe it's because I'm super just obsessed with Youngblood these days. I mean, and his voice. But Callum reads as very poetic, very smart, but also very vulnerable. He's artistic. He is a singer, but he's too embarrassed to sing in front of people. But when he does, apparently his vocals are panty melting. Love that. Because I've always loved a musician, not gonna lie. He is very dark and he does dark humor, he does sarcasm, but he also keeps like getting called because he's a mortician with jet black hair that kind of falls in his face a little bit. And he's super tall and lean, but he's cut. He's got a, like I said, surprisingly really good body. All of this screams Youngblood to me. Just the vulnerability and the poeticness and the sensitivity, but they're steel underneath and can be sarcastic and really funny, but also just really heartfelt. And Callum writes Lark a song. He listens, he really listens. And I'm telling you, if you're a fan of Youngblood and you're a woman, you know Youngblood was written by a woman because he actually really listens and he's a feminist and he makes that eye contact. And apparently so does Callum. And I could not help but picture him as Youngblood. And when I did, that was that. Like I was so into this book after that because Callum does some things and says some things that will melt your heart. Like just melts it. I love an awkward but poetic man. That's my husband. He is socially awkward. He's a different sort, but he is so brilliant. And I'm talking about my husband right now. He is so brilliant and so intentionally kind and really listens. So even though he's socially awkward with other people, he really listens to the things that I care about and I enjoy. And he surprises me with these little things that make me go, oh my God, you know me. Oh my God, you love me. And Callum did the same stuff with Lark. I mean, he wouldn't be for everybody, but I'm putting him on my book boyfriend list because he reminds me of my husband. And I pictured his young blood on top of it all. So I was like, okay, like again, had to get about halfway through the book, but I loved the second half so much. I'm bumping the star rating up to a 4. And so Youngblood is my Callum forever, and I cannot be swayed. I know that if I were to actually look at it in a more technical way, if I was to look at how he was physically described, he was described as looking, like Youngblood could pull him off very, very easily. Mm. But there are actual actors that I think would probably play him better if I were to make a real movie out of it. And if they did, I would totally watch it. I would. There was enough like dark humor in there. There was a lot of heart. I would watch this as a book. I wouldn't bill it as a rom-com, more of a romantic drama, but I would still very much watch it because the contrast to his dark, moody awkwardness and her just absolute vivacious Southern light, sunshiny. She loves sunflowers. Like she's just this ray of sunshine that's, you know, doesn't like conflict and it's just like, I bless your heart. And, like to his, I don't know, angel of death is what her friend nicknames him as. Her cousin comes to visit Ireland, and that kind of sets us up for book 2 because I have a good feeling that she's going to get with the hot vocalist solicitor Aiden. But yeah, she calls him the angel of death, which again, young blood, very sexy. For Lark, I went with Madison Eisman. And she's 29. She is from South Carolina. She's beautiful. She's blonde hair, blue eyed. She, has a Southern Belle feel. She looks like the girl next door who's just sweet and fun and, that sort of thing. She's in Jumanji. She's also in the Rainmaker TV show. And I think she'd be perfect. And it would have that really nice foil to Callum being tall and dark and socially awkward, but very poetic. And yeah, I was into it, man. I was so into it. I love kind of an alt guy. So that's why I ended up loving this book so much is because I pictured it. I play a movie in my head as I read a book, and I pictured Youngblood. And when this guy, let's get to the spice. Okay, let's get to the spice. He speaks Irish to her, baby. in the act, and this man does not mind getting dirty. Okay. He loves it. And I'm giving the spice level of 3. It was a slow burn through the bulk of the book, but when we finally got there, babe, did we get there where there was some payoff? There was payoff. He was speaking Irish to her. He's telling her how to touch yourself in Irish, and he's telling her all these, like, there's a scene, y'all, that kind of initiates their first interaction. And she's telling him, this guy at work's giving me a bunch of grief. And there's a language barrier because she uses a word like shift. You need to take another shift. And he flips it because apparently shift in Irish slang, it means like kissing or making out. So he's like, "Oh, you want a long shift or a short shift?" Like he's just being a dick. And she's like, "I want you to work because you're not getting your stuff done. I don't understand." And so she tells Callum while she's being flirty, because at this point she is like so into him, and vice versa. She starts saying, "Hey, I need to know what some sayings are in Irish." And she's like, "How do you say, pussy? How do you say this? How do you say that?" And he is just like, they're getting themselves hot, and he's just speaking Irish at her. And she's like, "Oh yeah, well, how about this?" Just like, I'll be honest, I'd be into it. I would have jumped on him too, climbed him like a tree. There's even, and I love this, y'all, in the back of the book, there is a list. So there is a vocab pronunciation / translation list. And it's a bunch of like naughty terms in Irish. And I'm gonna tell you what, I'm gonna be studying and trying to learn these because okay, what was I? It made me aliosa. And I've probably butchered that. Aliosa. And it means an aroused woman. So it made me an aroused woman, aliosa. I loved it. This was so much fun. This was such a nice touch. And I will be studying up. Okay. Book was a 4, solid 4. It bumped up after. I mean, I thought it was a 3, a good halfway through the book, and then suddenly it was just like 4, 4, 4. I loved it. The spice was a 3, and I was pretty happy with that. Talk Irish to me, baby. And now let's move on to quotes because I've already done casting. I jumped ahead and did the casting, but come on, I nailed it. And yes, like I said, there are other actors who would probably play Callum better, but to me, he is young blood, and I am not taking any questions about it. My podcast, and I could be a brat. He's young blood to me, baby. Whew. And I might reread the book again just because he is. Let's get to quotes. So I got some good ones, and I'm not going to try to speak Irish again because I know I butchered it. My accent doesn't let me do things like that. All right, this is Callum. And I felt personally called out by this quote. "Nothing grates us more than our language being called Gaelic, except hearing Yanks boast what percentage of Irish blood they have, according to some website." Holy shit. Thanks, Callum. Just call me out. And that's on page number 10. So that's another reason it took me a minute to get through it because I felt very called out as a Yank who has boasted about Irish. Yeah, I've done that. And I did call Irish language Gaelic because I thought that's what it was called, but apparently not. And shame on us Americans. I don't know, but nah, I felt so called out. Who else? I'm not the only one. Give me a break. Yes, I dog ear pages too, by the way. Which one is this? Oh, this was ironic. And it also kind of shows you the heaviness of the book, I guess, the emotional heaviness. They become good friends with this elderly lady, and they met her because Lark had 0 furniture. And she didn't want to invest too much money into furniture because she knew it was a temporary position. So she ended up buying some furniture from this older lady who was selling it to get rid of it. And she bought a dresser and some other things. And because she's such a likable person, she struck up a friendship and went with her all the time. But she also found out again later in the book that this lady had terminal cancer and she ends up passing away, and it hits it hits it hits her really hard. But this is after she found out she had cancer. She hadn't passed yet, but she had cancer. And so this is what Lark had to say. After 2 years of running from any reminder of mortality, compartmentalizing my memories to avoid falling into the yawning chasm of depression, I ended up close to a man whose very life revolved around death, from his career to his family legacy to his home itself. And I became friends with a dying woman. Talk about irony. I mean, the emotional heaviness here. She does seem like she is struggling emotionally a good bulk of the book, which is why I was so glad that at the end of the book, they didn't just jump into a marriage together. I was worried that's what's going to happen, and which would tie it up into a nice, happy ending bow. But she really needs to process before she gets into another marriage. And yeah, I'm really glad that it ended the way it ended, with them together, them happily together, but them working like they're taking it slow, and they're not jumping into some marriage or anything. They're taking it slow. They're continuing their friendship. They're getting to know each other in their relationship, going at a reasonable pace, not a breakneck romance novel pace. And she's working in therapy, and she ends up reconnecting with her sister-in-law. And her sister-in-law is like, I've been trying to reach you to apologize. I was grieving. I'm in therapy, and I should never have said that. And, just they end up, I don't know about rekindling their whole friendship, but they do at least make a repair, which is, that's really nice. Okay. Look, the spice got spicy, and it was a good and bad thing because, like I said, Callum likes to get dirty. And I'm reading some of this going, I'm having some moments, all right, where I was like, I don't know if this is sexy or if I'm wigged out. Here's one. Here's one such moment. And get ready. Warning, I'm about to get spicy, y'all. I'm saying some stuff here. And this is after he has gone down on her apparently very, very well. And she goes, Cal, how are you so good at that? She breathlessly asked, scooting back to sit on my chest. I could feel her wetness on my sternum, like she was an animal marking me with her scent, a deliciously primal notion. She left a snail trail. Y'all, that's what that is. Just from his mouth, and then she scoots down. I was just like, I don't know. Like, should I applaud him for doing that, good work? Or should I be like, no, man, like, lift up. What are you doing? Why are you sliding? I don't know. I was just like, wow, wow, wow. Okay. I don't know. I don't know. This is one of those poetic moments where Callum, once he has become connected with someone, he is so emotionally involved and he is so poetic about it. And he is just like full in loyal. And this is something he says to her when he's telling her he loves her. And it just, I mean, melt. He says, Mukushla. It means my pulse. I never quite understood it before, what it meant to have another person be the driving force behind the pump of your blood. But it's true. Lark, your smile saved me like an emergency transfusion. Your laugh is a song my every blood cell dances to.
Your touch revived me from darkness. You are my pulse. You make me feel alive when I'm surrounded by death. Holy shit, y'all. Oh my God. Okay, Callum. I mean, that and you're speaking Irish and you look like young blood in my mind. I mean, I died. I died. The end of this book, like the middle to the end of this book, just had me as an inferno. I loved it, y'all. And I'm going to end on that note because nothing tops that quote. It's absolutely scrumptious. Whew. So Callum's on my book boyfriend list now. I love his awkward little self. And I love that he can throw down. And oh my God. I mean, who doesn't love an awkward man that can rock your world? Oh, all right. I'm into it. That's it for our Lust of the Irish series, y'all. I hope you enjoyed it and join me next month for our Love and Bloom series, which will start next Tuesday. So we got some fun stuff ahead and we're going to fully enjoy spring. So I'll see you next week. And until then, stay spicy.
And that's it for this episode of Book Tease. Book and theme reveals and episode commentary can be found at TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook at Book Tease Pod. Theme music is by The Scraps, and until next time, stay spicy.